let's start below people with the skill levels. What type of skill levels do you think that the people will go to the FIT should have?
Yeah. So again, remember we talked earlier about the old paradigm or the framework was the primary company having different functions and people from those functions being in the FAT. Yeah. So they were looking at certain things that they would look for. They would do their checklist. The other person do their checklist. That's great. Everyone's prepared. Everyone's doing their job. But what's always missed in FATs are variability. I'm going to use the word variabilities. And the variabilities exist in 4 areas. And you'll hear Interflex Solutions, well, in Packbrain, we're talking about this together now. And this is what happens in packaging systems. It's the product variability, meaning do we have the standards and all of the ingredients about this product that we can baseline. So we need baseline on the product. We need baseline on the input materials. We need the skill level of the operators that are going to be there in the FAT. What do they know and what do they don't know? We need, again, the methodology of the line. So the sequence of operation, how is it planning to run that line or that piece of equipment? And then I'm going to use the last one I'm going to call modes of operation. That's the engagement on how that asset really runs or is utilized in the company's facility. Meaning, do they stop the line to do a regulatory compliance check that they didn't tell the original equipment manufacturer to be aware of it in the line design? So things of these nature, I'm going to call them, they're the 4 inputs that have variability that is not always documented. And when you go to an FAT, it's a snapshot, only a certain point of time, and may not have all those variabilities in place. So you need to have all the variabilities somewhere in the FAT to try and validate the tolerance of this variability. So when in production, you are prepared and it's not a surprise stopping the production line because of micro and minor stoppages, which again, will impact the ability to grow that business.
Yes. So most of the company, they don't have too much personnel, to go to the FITs.
Exactly.
And they start to debate, within the company, if we send our people or we hire external firm to go there. For me, I'm a believer that employees should go to the FIT, not external companies, because they are the one that own the process. They are the one that know exactly what really they need. But what are your thoughts about that? You have with experience as a manager in big industry, how you see hiring other companies to do the factory acceptance test for you?
Roberto, you really, your question is very pointed and it's apropos for today. It doesn't matter internal or external. The problem is the same. I'm going to say that because I agree your internal people are going to be owners of that end result of the FAT. They're going to live with it, right? The external companies, I'm not going to say this, this is going to be like a conundrum. They'll be partners. They'll help you through the FAT, but they don't live with it day to day. That's where the opportunity is. What's missing is both parties collaborating on the variability in those 4 building blocks. I'm going to keep saying that. Exactly. And I'm going to say, being a prior CPG employee and leading in those industries, sometimes we didn't know what we thought we knew because of the amount of volume we would do on a certain SKU. We just ran that. When we ran a new volume or new SKU, it introduces different variabilities. So what's missing is not the processes and the flow charts and the checklist and the your beginning of a production run meeting and after production run meeting. It's while it's running issue, and that typically what happens is stoppages, line stoppages, breakdowns. Morale of employees being low because they've done their best, they were trained, but someone didn't tell them that, this machine really only runs at 200 a minute, it can't run at 210, and running it at 210 will induce some variability like minor stops and breakdowns. So,
Yes.
and those are some of the things that are not caught early. And that's why that FAT, the mitigation, is so important. So to answer your question, I would say your internal people they will be owners, but I have seen that both internal and external miss some of the basic building blocks of an FAT, and then going into an SAT operation, maintaining
No,
that.
of course. And for me, it makes sense that the external people will miss stuff in the FIT because they are not part of the process. But that is where you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast the key word here, pre-FIT. So if you company, we hire company like us, Packbrain and
Yeah.
to do FIT. Yes, of course, we can do the process. We can do that implementation, but the pre-FIT will be one of our requirements,
Yes.
right? To be
Yeah.
able to be successful, because without pre-FIT, I will not be able to understand your process. And if I don't understand your process, how I can deliver to you a successful product during the FIT?
Yeah. So the pre-FAT, I'm a big proponent of a pre-FAT because it forces the OEM to do due diligence
Yes.
before calling in the hiring company, the food company, whatever, to come in and to validate with them the machine performance or line performance. So Wilberto, I believe in teaching companies how to do pre-FATs, both OEMs and say CPGs or in pharma. I think our value is teaching how to do. You said let them build and own, but we could do it for them. But long term, that's not sustainable, right? Because there's only so much capacity we both have to do those FATs for them. But if we can coach them and they take it internally and that becomes part of their standard routines and how they do it, you empower them to be better and to grow and to be faster and more nimbler. And that's what they want to do. They want to be faster and nimbler. Yeah.
Yeah, that is great information, Robert, that you mentioned there. One more below people, because I want to get your perspective on this. So
Okay.
we talk about people skills, right? Related internal or external,
Right.
the impact to the operation that could cause, right? That no matter internal or external, we can have issues during FIT. You are not well prepared. We understand
Exactly.
that already. But what about post factory acceptance test communication? How important is that from the people that we go to the factory acceptance test, or could be internal or external, back to the business, so they can share the correct information on what is coming and what was the successful part, or
Yeah.
was not too successful.
Yeah. So a post FAT is an SAT, site acceptance test, which is scaled up, right?
Yes, but you're right. But let's focus on the communication, not
Yeah.
implementation. So, for example, let's put this more clear. I go to the FIT, right? And then I need to go to you, my manager, and say, hey, this was the result. How should be that communication? It's just
Oh,
verbal, or you should have something really well documented. So when you receive the equipment, you already have a plan ahead of time.
yeah. So in most situations, there are procedures, whether it's electronic, should be electronic documentation. So it can be live and real. That's captured. That typically what happens is those that are responsible for approving the FAT success sign off on it, right? On all the different requirements for the OEM and for the hiring company. And what happens with that is you carry that into, say, your factory. And what I mean is getting ready. So what do you do with that documentation, right? So there are going to be some issues potentially, maybe small. And we talked about mitigations. So you take those issues into the factory and you start working on it ahead of time. You start mitigating, wow, potentially we said this line's going to do, we thought we said 210. Somehow in engineering, they've got 200 and they told the OEM 200. We really need 210 from the factory. So that's going to induce probably some issues downstream or upstream on our production line. So now everyone can get ready and start, typically you have some buffer time typically, maybe not a lot.
Mhm.
If your FAT is successful, you have the buffer time. If it's not successful, you've eaten up the buffer time getting that FAT ready in cost. So yeah, typical electronic documentation and having that communication with the stakeholders within the factory and manufacturing. So you
Perfect.
must be transparent, you must be visible. And I'm going to go back again into real operations. The success requirement there is exponentially at a higher risk because you've got more moving parts, and different people that were at the FAT are now going to be running that production line. Different shifts, different training skill levels, different sort of expectations, and all that just needs to be captured. That goes back to the prefat, understanding the organizational culture,
Mhm.
the OEM's capability,
Mhm.
and then again, what are the gaps in the mitigation plan to bring that over?
Yeah. In the pharmaceutical industry and medical device or regulated business, before FIT, companies send a document, a binder with documentation of requirement to the OEM, and they need to be approved by quality, and it's a lot of procedure that they need to follow. But food and beverage and CPG is not so regulated in this aspect in terms of FIT documentation. But anyway, I recommend to at least have a small scale electric documentation, like Robert mentioned, because you can have control of exactly what you are doing during FIT, and you can document exactly what happened. And you don't have surprises when the equipment is delivered and you are start to run your SIT, because sometimes people go to the FIT and the machine will take maybe 2 months to be delivered, and maybe the person that went to the FIT
It's in a different
resign
role or a
or
different
go
role.
to a different role,
Yeah.
and then, okay, what happened? Hey, what happened? Can I have a conference with you you can explain to me? If you have everything well documented, you will have everything clear, no matter who is the person that is working on the project,
Yeah, exactly.
it's really important. So related to SIT, more to come, because we are going to have part 2 of this video where we are going to be talking about SIT.